started with a nice introduction. You saw my students before. My name is Jaimie Knight, and I'm excited. I'm kind of like the newbie on this one. We were talking about earlier that she was doing exactly what I'm doing, which is running around today. I've had like 2 panels, and then kids playing and getting students. Okay, this is like the industry panel for performing arts. And as Jack alluded to earlier, the performing arts in many CTE programs, they didn't used to consider that it was even legit. Okay, they think, oh, well, that's VAPA. To me, it is very much so. It's like when I went to Long Beach State, I was talking to one of the gentlemen that was here, Antonio, about Long Beach State. Back in the 70s, they looked at my electric bass guitar and said it wasn't an instrument. So it's kind of the same thing. Like now, we are being recognized. The performing arts pathway is a very important thing. But there's still discussions as far as what is CTE and what isn't. But ultimately, you guys are professionals in the field, and a big part of the performing arts pathway with AME is actual industry connections, working with the industry, as well as the content learning and all of that. A big part of it is just what we're doing today. So we have the performing arts pathway. They basically say sample occupations could be a composer, and we have a composer, it's not that. Performers, we have a performer over there, radioactive, and I'll have the names officially, and then we have also a songwriter as well as, you heard Dean's story. So right now, the people that are on the panel, Dean Torrance, right here, recording artist, producer, radioactive, beatbox, hip-hop artist, performer, Clark Lewis, artistic director, and professor, Academy, where is that?
San Francisco.
Oh, very cool. And then Ben, help me with the last name, because
Yudvalkis.
And there are some words that we don't even understand in English, correct?
There's a sound. Yeah, I can't even pronounce it right. Apparently, according to my grandparents. So you're off the hook if you want to give it a shot. Lithuanian.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I love. I was getting questions by Jack Mitchell about to start this. So what we're going to do is initially get them to talk about their whole journey of doing this, and we're going to team this because who are your people that are friends with you?
So these 3, I thought that was mine. No, it's okay. I was like, these 3 guys are the industry folks that work specifically with my program in Sonoma County. So they're teaching artists, essentially, so they have some experience working in education, and so they have a very unique perspective because they understand our world as well as their worlds. I think that's the best way of putting it. So Clark has directed several shows for my Performing Arts Academy. Ben has been the musical director. Ben and Radio both actually have been musical directors for our shows, and they all mentor my students. So I'm thankful to have them be here.
And part of this whole thing that, I wish I could say I started everything with a total plan. I didn't. A lot of stuff just happens and things evolve. And my relationship with Dean was just happenstance, but it was a wonderful thing that you came. And then the other unintended consequence is that I was fortunate to have his daughter in our music program, and that's kind of how this stuff grows a lot of times for all of their programs. So with that, the questions that they want you to know, they'd like each one of you to spend about 5 to 8 minutes talking about, and I put this on the screen in case you're going, what do you want me to say? How did you get your current position? Talk about both your education, career moves, also include whatever stories or anecdotes that's made the journey interesting, and then educational. So you can start right over here with radioactive, and then once you're finished, just pass it over to the next. And from a technical standpoint, our videographer, they won't hear your voice really well.
They'll hear my voice.
Okay.
Do you guys want me to give you like time cues as far as 5 minutes? Because he'll talk for like 20 and think it's 5. So.
All right.
He sounds like me, actually, so that's good. So with that, radioactive, why don't you take it away?
My name is MC Radioactive. I guess my current position is in life is hip hop, and I preserve hip hop and share that culture. I'm a beatboxer, MC, do voiceovers, I write songs, and create productions for people, as well as work for youth and empowerment of youth and adults as well, because these days adults need empowerment as well. talk about your education and career moves. I was in a band called Microphony and Spearhead for a number of years, writing songs and performing. I also was an announcer for Golden State Warriors, and then I did voiceovers for Dance Dance Revolution, the first 3 of them, I believe. My education in that would be from the streets and hip hop. The best type of education right now, because I know funding for the arts is going down, and you got to figure out ways to do more art with less funding. That's hip hop for me. That's art with no funding at all. Include whatever the stories and anecdotes that made the journey interesting and educational. Well, life is a funny thing like that. I got like 2 minutes probably to answer that, so I'm like, that's a 20-day answer.
You have 3.
I got 3? Okay, perfect. So the thing about, for me, for hip hop and rhythm, what brings me to the understanding of that now in my life is how everything is connected to rhythm and vibration and textures, sounds, meanings, feelings. Within that, nature creates nature all around us with that. And as we find more and more about it, we see the rhythms of the nature. So that's where I see like hip hop has brought me into that place with its words, feelings, movements. It's also the strength and the power of, how can I put this, oppressed people. And anecdotes that made the journey interesting. Well, freestyling and trying to get people to freestyle. Beatboxing, trying to get people to teach people to beatbox. Beatboxing is like speaking without having words for someone to define what you're saying, but they can feel what you're feeling. And working with Frenzel and with the students, I'm also working with CHOPS and a bunch of different schools, and that's really empowering me, and I'm learning. That's really what the situation is. I learn more than I think I'm giving. It's a, what would they call that, symbiotic relationship, right? All right, there we go.
So thank you. And this is a real casual gathering that we're talking. So Ben, the same questions.
Hello. Thank you for being here. My name is Ben. I'm a musician and general composer and sort of music person in several respects. And I would say what my current position is actually a really fortunate one, which is that I'm the music person for non-musicians. So I work in a lot of fields where, like, I don't actually work with musicians hardly at all. I work with other groups who need music. And that is a really cool place to be because I get to be very collaborative and work with a whole bunch of creative people who have great taste and great ideas, but they're coming at it from a perspective that a musician would never come from. And so that puts me in a lot of very like unintuitive, weird places that I have to find my way out of, and really helps me expand my own perspective and world. And so I'm really fortunate to be in that position.
Give an example of that. So like.
Sure. So that's my current position. For instance, say I'm working with a dance company and they need a score. I'll make some music, maybe I'll play it, I'll give it to them, and they'll say, oh, that's great, but just like shine an orange light on it. Or, I want to see the shadow of that on the wall. Yeah, I save my voice. I save the voicemails that people leave me because, like, those are literal, actual things, and a musician would just never. That's not how a musician thinks at all. And it's my job to just smile and like great.
That sounds like a dance. I'm a dance teacher.
Yeah, dance. People talk about it like that. It's a visual.
I
get that.
Yeah, and and so then I have to translate that into music terms. And the thing is, it's actually a great idea that they tell me it's actually the right thing to do, but I would never think to do that. And then I have to like get really out of the box to figure out how to execute that. And so it's such a great, as an artist, it's such a great place to be, to have to force to do that. Because a musician would know exactly what to tell me, and there would only be one way to do what a musician asks me to do, because they know. But if another kind of artist asks me to do something, there's an infinite number of ways. So that is my position right now. And I would say the way I got into that, I grew up and I had a traditional music education. I learned how to play piano and a bunch of stuff. And I was in marching band and learned how to play drums and stuff. After college, I had a friend who was an accompanist for ballet classes, and I was like, and I moved to I had like substituted for him once, and I was like, I moved to San Francisco, and I was like, oh, like that's something that I could do. And I totally just lied and told people I had experience and I knew what I was doing. And within like 3 days of moving to San Francisco, I was doing it full time, and people were very patient with me, and I'm so fortunate for that. And so I started working with dancers and meeting a lot of choreographers and theater people, and then that kind of just like started my networking ability. And so I would say that's how I got to the position that I'm in, which is really nice. And yeah, so I would say education-wise, I have a really traditional music education, but then I really stopped working in the music field. No, I don't know hardly anyone in the music field, and no one in the music field knows who I am. And that was really important too, especially as a composer, because I don't have any critics who are like talking about what I do. No one like, I feel like I had room to experiment and be really weird and like just learn who I was and learn my voice in a space that no one was really paying attention to too closely. And I know that if I was a symphonic composer and I was writing, and San Francisco Chronicle was like writing about what I was doing, like I could imagine that totally crushing me and stifling my development. So that's all been really fortunate that my career kind of, I'm visible to a lot of people, but to the music world, I'm totally not. And that's, sometimes I'm sad about it, but overall it's been really, really great. And I recommend in general, it's a great position to be the outsider in a field. Be the choreographer in the theater world, or be the theater person in the music world, or whatever that may be. That is a prime position to be. So that's if you want to be thinking about career stuff for your students or whatever, that is a great pathway, and is, I think it was totally by accident for me, and I think it is for most of the people who get into that position, but it's really great. Okay.
Yes. My name is Clark Lewis. I run Roustabout Theater, which is a nonprofit theater in Sonoma County. We're the resident theater company at the Luther Burbank Center there, which is a sort of big media place that people come. It's one night bands come through and do things. We're there. So we're across the hall. It's a 220-seat, nice, intimate theater for us. We have two divisions. So we have a professional company. It's an equity guest artist company. And then we also have a training program that we've been running actually for kids 11 to 20. And we integrate those things, and I can talk about that in a while. Basically, how I got there is I started as a musician. I was a singer and a piano player and accompanist and things for people. And I ended up going to Juilliard for grad school as a conductor. So I was there having a nice time and decided to take an acting class because I was interested in theater, and I found theater people more interesting than music people. And so I was down in the theater department a lot, watching and sort of interacting with those guys, and I took a class. And from that class, I got an agent and got work. So I thought, oh, well, I could do this. Why not? It seems easy if that's all I have to do. So fortunately, I hit all the roadblocks that you hit on the way, but I was fascinated by the process of acting and working in theater, and it was something that I loved to do. I just didn't know how I was going to get into it. So I actually parlayed I had a sort of clientele of singers who knew me as a conductor that would use me as a coach. And those singers knew other people in New York that were doing musical theater stuff. And so pretty quickly I had a clientele of Broadway singers that were coming to me to coach for shows. And so I got to be known in New York as a coach. And I was studying a lot and trying to make sure that I could make that transition pretty seamlessly. And then began directing as well, which isn't that different from conducting, I found out. So I enjoyed that. I ended up moving to LA, and I took a lot of my clients were going there as well, so that was great. And I worked there for a while and then moved up to Sonoma County, where I am now. And when I got to Sonoma County, I just decided, probably partly out of ego and partly out of reality, I think, that there was not a theater doing what I wanted to do. I was looking for a particular kind of work, and I just didn't see it around, so I started a theater. Why not? So that was 11 years ago, and we've had a lot of success, and I absolutely love what I do every day, so I consider myself really lucky to be able to do that. I also teach at the Academy of Art University, so I'm the artistic director down there as well, which means that I direct just about all the shows at the moment. And teach some of the acting classes and oversee those productions. So we do 4 productions a year, I guess, there. So it's a small department. We just really opened up about 4 years ago. So we're building that theater department. There's a very strong film and television department that's been going for about 20 years. But the theater department is new, and we just branch off. So it's been fun to be setting that up and working on that as well. I think about Roustabout for us is just the integration of the students and the professionals. We try to set it up so that the students help us backstage, but are also able to come and watch rehearsals. And so we want them to understand what the rhythm of a professional rehearsal feels like, what my conversations with those actors are like, so they start to understand what is it that, because if I'm dealing with the kids, it's a very different process, right? So I'm dealing a lot more with how I'm getting them from zero to what they're going to be doing on stage. With professionals, we're talking a lot about other things where I say, let's try this, and they just enact it, and then we go and we look at the tone and the pace and the flow of the scene, and I can handle those problems a lot more quickly. So we try to make sure that they're able to do that, and we have also people that come in and work for us that also then teach master classes and work with those kids as well. So we try to make sure there's an intersection of both those things. So that's really what we're trying to do at Roustabout, and have been pretty happy with our success there. I try to get in as many people as we can that sort of name people to come in, because the kids get excited and it's nice for us. So people that we've had Jason Robert Brown, who's a Tony Award-winning composer, come in. And we've had the guy who was the associate musical director from American Idol, Michael Orland came in, and they sort of come in and do one-on-one workshops with our students, so they also get that feeling. And we have kids that then end up going to New York, and I'm like, listen, you have 3 or 4 of these people, you have their email, they know who you are, they've talked to you, you've had conversations with them, they keep up with them. You have contacts in New York, so you can go to New York and you're just not going to be on your own. And they never really believe that they're supposed to use that email, but when they do, and they realize, when you get to New York and you don't have a job, everybody's an actor looking for a job. So they create that, and it really, we think really helps establish them there and just feel like they're more part of the industry when they get there, instead of being somebody that's so outside trying to figure out what's going on. So we're really thrilled with the people we brought in that have been able to help the kids do that, and we're happy to facilitate that for them.
Dean, they heard you. I said everything, but you didn't say everything, honestly. They talked about the Tammy show, and in case you've never seen that, that was it was a big deal, but it wasn't a commercial success until later. But we lost a pioneer just recently with Chuck Berry, because he played at the Tammy show. And did you meet Chuck, and tell us a little bit about Chuck? When you would either do gigs with him or anything like that?
Oh, we played a lot with him. Interesting character.
Anything that you can actually share.
I think probably not. We love to introduce him, you know, when we would be hanging with him, we would always make the point because Chuck and Jan had the same last name. So we'd say, you know, so they were brothers from another something. And obviously a very talented guy. All I remember from him is he wanted to be paid in cash. He'd take his money, he needed to have the money before he went on stage. I just think it's actually pretty smart.
Yeah.
You know? That was his full focus, was to get what was due him. So I didn't spend as much time with him as I'd like to have, because he was certainly a character. Boy, he wrote some songs that will be around probably.
Now,
Forever.
when his impact came out, like going back to high school, you know, for you, as far as what the things that shaped you and influenced you, because you guys were the cutting edge as far as you created surf music between, you know, you and a few other major. How did that happen? How did the whole creating of that whole genre of music happen?
I'll find out. One more thing about Chuck, and I think maybe this would be interesting as I thought about it. He, along with getting paid in front, he was all about getting paid, playing his money, and leaving. He would also usually ask the buyer to actually hire the backup band for him, because he didn't like to pay for, you know, carrying a band with him. But he would bring one musical director who'd give the band hand signals, and most of it was all in E, so it was pretty easy. And my real recollection was, you know, Chuck, man, I mean, you could have been one of the more important artists out there playing your music. And how he got to this certain point of only caring about getting that show, getting there, getting his money, and then playing with people he never met before. I mean, those songs, everybody knew the songs. And they're relatively, usually the bands he picked up were okay. But I went, man, if you treated this really seriously, and that was the discussion I would like to have had with him. I mean, I would love to have been involved with that somehow. But I'm guessing he wouldn't have listened or cared, which is a real shame, because he could have been playing stadiums. We were playing stadiums. He could be easily playing stadiums. And he just was happy in this little niche. And I just was, it really saddened me that he didn't really have a great 20 or 30 years later and playing really important dates and being enjoyed for being one of the people that started it.
That started all of this.
Yeah. So that always bothered me. There's so much potential there, and he just, for whatever reason, just didn't really care about any of that.
Another thing that didn't get, and first of all, I was blown away by Twee's performance. A student did those interviees. I was
She confused me. Well, that's too much. That was too much information.
She was prepared. I was waiting for the punchline.
You didn't get those questions in advance?
Yeah, so I was really thinking. It's so complicated.
Another thing that a lot of us don't know, or we're finally starting to know this, you got to play with the Wrecking Crew, which at that time wasn't known as the Wrecking Crew. But if you don't know the story on that, it's a worthwhile documentary that Tommy Tedesco was basically a tribute to his dad. And there was a group of session musicians in Los Angeles, and they were the ones that created this sound, or at least translated what you guys were trying to do. So what was it like?
Well, a lot of us early on, we didn't have bands. So unless we could actually play our own instruments, and if you're only two guys, it's not very much instrumentation. So we were full-time college students, so we didn't really have a whole lot of time to sit around and put together a band and rehearse a band, and then they would have to wait while we were at school and go out on weekends. So it just wouldn't work. So of course we would write out all of our parts, and when Herb Alpert was a part of our team, And he taught Jan arranging, and then Jan at UCLA minored in music. He was pre-med, but then he minored in music, so he started learning all those things that Herb was doing and became a great arranger unto himself. But, so we'd write out all the parts between us all and then find 5, 6, 7 great musicians. They were all over LA. And for $200, they'd come in and you'd put the music in front of them, play it, and in 2 takes they'd have it. 2 or 3, done. Okay, what else are you gonna do? Okay, what's the next song? And in a session of maybe an hour and a half or 2, they cut maybe 2 to 3 tracks. So these guys were the cream of the crop. And then they kept getting larger, and then, you know, Glenn Campbell came to town and he was added into the mix, and my God, you know, he got some of the best players ever. When we cut Surf City was a song that Brian Wilson lost interest in. I mean, creative people, they lose interest in things all the time and then move on to the next thing. And he had discovered Chuck Berry's song. What was that? It became Surfing USA. Sweet Little 16, I guess. You know these things, right? Okay. So Brian Wilson, being an 18-year-old kid, went, okay, the Surf City thing, lost interest. He wanted to do a surf song. And we all loved Chuck Berry. So he got that whole Chuck Berry lick, and then he went, well, I'll just take the whole lick and the melody, and I'll just write my own words about surfing. Okay. So he one afternoon just messing around with Peter, he goes, you know, do you want to hear my next single? So sure. He plays Surfing USA, you know. But that's Chuck Berry's song. I said, well, yeah, but I changed the words. I said, well, I don't, you know, Brian, I don't think you can do that. You know, you just can't take somebody else's melody and change the words. He said, well, my dad said it was okay. I said, well, your dad works in a machine shop. I'm not sure he really knows that that's not okay, but I don't suggest you should do that. And so we said, why don't you give that song to us? We know Chuck. And we'll call Chuck, and then we'll make some sort of deal. You know, let's split publishing or something, which he probably won't do, but you know, it's worth at least letting him know this is in the works, because if he finds out you just do it, you know, you're gonna get sued, and you will not get writers, you will not get publishing, nothing, and probably end up paying him a big chunk of money. So why don't you give it to us? No, well, why? He said, well, I got another song for you. I got this Surf City song, and it's only half finished. I don't want to do it. So here, you can have that. You finish it, you can have it. So Brian, you wrote Surf City. You're a writer, right? You got your own publishing company. It doesn't make sense for you to work on this Surfing USA song when you got none publishing. You know, you just change the words. You're going to get sued. So why don't you give us Surfing USA? We'll help you finish Surf City, okay? And then you can keep the publishing and writing, and maybe we'll be co-writers. No. Okay. Never mind. When it comes time to tell you, told you so, which obviously happened. So we took Surf City, we finished it, added in the stuff that half lyrics that he didn't do. Jan cut a great track. We used our studio guys. Brilliant track. We used 2 drummers, which we'd never done before. We had an old drummer left over from kind of the R&B session guys, kind of Earl Palmer. So Earl, we didn't want to, he'd been with us since the beginning, doo-wop days. So Earl, you'll be next to Hal Blaine. Hal Blaine's kind of the new guy in town. And we'll set up your drum kits right next to one another. We'll write every single part, both of them read. So everything is written. So all you gotta do is be able to read, they could read, and then away we went. And it was a great track. Called Brian Wilson up, said, we finished the track. Want to hear it? Sure. I said, but we're gonna do vocals, you wanna come do vocals? Okay. So he comes to the studio, he hadn't heard it yet, we play it in the studio, and everything sounds good in the studio, right? And he went, how'd you do that? I said, what do you mean, you don't have a band? Brian, there's studio guys, and they come, you can pay them to come to the studio, and in an hour and a half or two, they can do almost everything that you're working on in an hour and a half. You aren't touring with the Beach Boys because you don't like it. You enjoy the process of making music and writing the arrangements and doing all the vocal parts, and then you wait for them to get off the road. And then they're pissed off, they're tired. Dennis goes on a binge, and then so you're waiting 3 or 4 days for them to get their rest. Then come in the studio, and you have to teach them all the vocal parts, all the instrumental parts. Here's a number, call Hal Blaine, the wrecking crew. Call him, and he'll put all these people together. They'll show up on time. They all read, you write, sit it in front of them, and in 2 or 3 takes, you got what you want, and you move on to the next one.
Wow.
So that's the studio guys, and that's why they were so good, so talented, and we would always ask them for their input. Basically, it was a team, and they made great records.
Very cool. Okay, there's another couple questions, and we'll do the same thing. Would you want to ask those? Those are the questions, and you can ask right
sure. Seeing who's best for which. Oh, interesting. Well, what was the? No, they're good. I might change a little bit. What was the decision that launched your journey or was instrumental in reaching your current position? I'm gonna give that one to Clark because I think you have.
Can you find the answer?
I know. Okay. Well, I know it's like hard.
That's fine. No.
The other thing, where do you see your specific aspect of the industry headed in 5 years? I want. He play with the cop.
No, it's smart. It's right by the mic. It's smart, yeah.
So maybe Clark and radio, will you talk on question 1, and then Ben, will you talk on question 2?
Sure.
For a couple minutes. They're hard questions, but I think they're important questions. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I can. It's sort of the same story that I tell, I guess. Listen, I had a day, and I work with actors all the time because I really like actors. I have an immense amount of respect for the courage that it takes to really be a good actor. And I was an actor for a while in New York, and I went out and I got jobs, and that was fine. And I was sort of going up and down the East Coast, working in regional theaters and all that stuff. And I was also going out on a lot of auditions, which is what a good actor does. And I had all the sort of typical things that go with that. Some that went really well, and others that, they literally typed me out one time when I walked in the room before I even made it all the way to the desk and told me I didn't have it, and so I called my agent and told him, no. And I just sort of put all that together pretty quickly and woke up one morning and thought, I do not want to be an actor. I don't want the decision about whether I know what I'm doing to rest in the hands of people who, for the most part, I've never met. I don't have any idea if I respect their decision or know what the criteria they're using. I just can't do it. And that memory is sort of burned in my mind because I woke up that morning, I had that thought, and I was like, I'm done. And I really enjoyed coaching, and I really liked directing, and I liked the other things that I was doing, so it was in sort of an easy switch for me. But it's sort of like, especially when we talk about the Chuck Berry thing, I was like, for me, one of the things that I talk to students about, particularly about college students that we're working with that are about to go on, I'm like, one of the decisions you're going to have to make in your life that's going to make a big difference is what kind of life do you want to have? And it's one of the reasons why we bring in people that are having careers in that industry, and they talk about, and we've all had friends who've been like, I knew plenty of people that were in New York when I was there. I mean, I had a friend who lived there for 13 years, and of those 13 years, 2.5 of them she actually lived in New York, and all the rest of the time she was on the road. I mean, she would be on the road for 11 and a half months out of the year and be home for 15 days in 1 month. And I thought it was great that she was working and she loved the work and she liked travel and all that stuff, but I'm like, I don't want that life, I just don't. And I had friends that were directors that sort of the same thing. They would be on the road with shows and they'd do 8 different shows and they were never home. And they were all, do you know what I mean? So it was like, I just thought that's not what I want. So when I had the chance for me to be in one place and have a home and have an established community that I was in and build a theater in that community, I mean, I worked hard to make it work, but we also looked around to say, what's the role that we can fill that we don't think is being filled yet, instead of just reproducing everything else that was out there, and making sure that people knew about it, and also then for us, to be honest, for us it was about doing good work, making sure that, I mean, for me, the interesting thing about working with kids was like we always had really high standards, and I never have a problem saying that doesn't work. I mean, if a kid's coming in and doing something, it's not they're not trying. That's great. I want them to try, but I'm like, what you're trying to do is not going to get you to where we need you to go. So take that energy and let's put it in this direction, and we can give you ideas about how to do that, right? How to focus that in a slightly different way. But I'm not going to stand here and say it's great if I don't think it's any good. I just don't think that's helpful. I just don't. And also it's part of that, like, we have a thing, and I'll talk about this tomorrow in my session, but we have what we call the 24-hour rule, which is after we post the cast list, no one is allowed to interact with the staff or any of the production team in any way for 24 hours. And we learned it the hard way, right? Which is we would have, not the kid, the parent would call up and go off on us. And I'm like, and so it happened one time, the parent was like, this is terrible. And I said, fine, that's great. We'll recast with, your daughter doesn't see the show. I'm sure it's really emotionally terrible for her. And so it'll take me literally 3 minutes to find someone else to fill that role. We did, it's fine. Called the next morning, of course, and said, oh, no, we didn't really mean that. I'm like, you meant it when you talked to me. So that part is gone. If you want to come back in and do something much less involved in the show, that's fine. But you made that decision, And again, for me, it's also part of the instruction that we have. It's like, right, you're gonna get a call, and the offer is good for the next 3 minutes until I call the next person. And so if you don't answer or you don't pay attention, you don't want like that. For us, that's part of getting ready for going out. And the other thing is, like, if you don't want that life, that's perfectly okay. But know that, in my experience, of a lot of people around us, that's the kind of life you're gonna have. So if you don't want that, that's also part of saying, do I want to do this? Do you know? So I think for us, that was a big part.
I mean, just to follow up with that, that's one of the things that we cherish about Clark working with our public high school students, because he will give them that real experience that mirrors what they will face in the industry. And yeah, sometimes it is harsh, but that's reality, and that's what kids need to know. If they really want to be performing artists, they can't be coddled, because it is not a coddling industry, right? And so I mean, he's not afraid to tell them and redirect and find the strengths and foster the strengths, instead of trying to keep allowing someone to go down a path that they might not ever succeed in. And I think that's a really valuable thing to teach students, So, and I mean, hard work pays off, but you have to find where to direct that work, So, Radio, I was thinking, as you look at this question, maybe even looking at the recent project that just won.
Oh.
So because you didn't even mention that.
Yeah.
And that's a really
I forget sometimes.
That's a really interesting piece, but maybe what launched your journey, but now where you see yourself, you've mentioned working with youth.
Yeah.
So where do you see,
So.
what do you think are the most essential things to teach kids also, as far as that goes?
I'll start with, from what launched, I'm from Boston. I was raised by a preacher. They wanted me to be a preacher. I ended up being an MC. I'm an artist, so I draw and paint, and I was doing a lot of the designs for a lot of my friends' cassette tape covers when they would rap. And by watching them, that's how I learned how to freestyle and beatbox. That moved on up into working with, I would say youth, but I just say humans, we're all different sizes, whatever. Working with, and I'll actually back up before that, really working with the streets. I was working for these people called Artists for Humanity, and this group called City Year, which when they brought me in, it was my first time working, period. Like everything else was fun and games. Then I started working into this urban Peace Corps where there's all different types of people, and that was the decision that I had to work with service, to work with people, and try to connect that rhythm. Fast forward to, I was just in an alleyway beatboxing and rhyming, and downstairs there was Vanilla Ice was playing with his rock band. He was gone for a while, and then he was playing with this band, and I wanted to go in and check it out. I went in there, well, I was in the back, and the band upstairs was playing. They came down and we were rhyming in the alleyway, and they ended up just grabbing me and be like, "You want to come on stage and play?" And so they brought me in. The band was called Galactic, and they had their head singer was a guy named Houseman Therold DeClue, and he talked them into bringing me with them on tour from Boston. That's how I ended up out here. I never went back. And they called me a couple days later and said, "Hey, we're playing tomorrow in New York City, and then we're starting a tour. Can you come?" And they sent me an address, and I didn't know where this was, but I left everything and went. When I got there, it was the Lincoln Plaza Center, and out front it said Galactic opening for James Brown. And I met James Brown, and that changed. I mean, I was doing music and hip hop, but it wasn't a thing of like, it's kind of like if you were working in your neighborhood and you're like, "I like to work in the neighborhood," but you weren't thinking about becoming president, So I met James Brown, and then that really pushed the forward of becoming, an artist, but then I didn't forget about the community. So as it kept on going, then I had children, I started working on kid hop and children's music and stuff like that, and that's really what I started to focus on. And I joined Microphony and Spearhead, got some gold records with them, left from that, started working with Windsor and stuff, and then I was deciding I wanted to do some children's stuff, and friends was like, "You should do like a kid show." And a friend of mine called me up and said, "Hey, I'm doing some kids music. You want to do one of the, do some songs, whatever?" And I said, "Yeah." And I went to the studio, did a beatbox. He ended up writing a song called Monsters. And then not too long ago, he called me up and he said, "I need your information because we're nominated for a Grammy. And so if you want your royalties." So I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." He goes, "They're probably not going to win, but whatever." Well, they won. So I ended up getting Grammy Award for participation in that. And that, I forget about it because it's so recent, and you don't want to toot your own horn, but at the same time, it's like, wow, it's kind of cool, Working with students and working with the youth is teaching me. It's bringing me back to where I was young, and I realized that at the age, I'm 40 now, when I was 12 and 13 years old, there was no role models artistically in the streets for, I'll call it hip hop culture, all of hip hop culture. It was so fresh and new, and now there are so many role models, not as an artist performing, but sound guys, different people that play in different parts of music, the different stories. When I hear the story about Chuck Berry and I hear what's going on, it's like I can integrate those things, and that pushed me forward to even now of looking at the technology and going, in my laptop, I can sit and record enough stuff that when I was 13, I would have had to have $150,000 and somebody that has a studio to go do it. And the youth, they actually can. They have it figured out. Not only that, you don't even really have to go on the road for, at that time when I was with Galactic, it was 300 shows a year we were doing. You don't have to do that. You can actually make some videos, make some music. I know people that don't even leave. They don't sell CDs, nothing. They just make music, make some videos. And it opens up that level of touching other things And I want to reiterate that hip hop culture, as it's forming now, as it's blooming, we realize it's not just a rapper and then that's hip hop, or it's not just a DJ, that's hip hop. We realize it's dance, it's graffiti, it's journalism, it's photography. And then the basis of that has no structure other than peace, love, unity, and having fun. So that connects around the world with every culture and every race. That has pushed me and constantly keeps on going to prove itself right, all the way from being going to church and having the definition told to me of God always being there and always will be, and then realizing to myself and looking at science and such and saying to me that is rhythm. And that vibration has always been there and it always will be. And then within that, it connects. And it really pushes me forward. That decision, that understanding really stays with it through learning math, through learning construction. It's always you know, and most recently finding out that that's how cathedrals were built, to music, and the way that cathedrals are built are actually how classical music is written. It's a physical recreation of actual music, and that's what creates that beauty. I did not know that. I'll also put into it, my current position is a position of moving forward, of moving and getting more responsibility, because I focused on the skills and the styles and exploring myself that way, and didn't focus at that time on the responsibility parts. And even though that it protected me, hip hop protected me, now I think that at the age where I'm at, I want to show youth that responsibility is important as well. And with the responsibility, to get the responsibility first, the hip hop and the young part can last forever. You never have to grow up if you stay on point with your responsibilities, because if you get the responsibilities done first, then you can play. And I guess that's what's got me, that's my current position right now, that's where I'm at. So I'll keep going and talking shit, so I'm like.
Yeah, and I think we're down to just
We're getting down to
7 minutes.
Open up for the audience to
Yeah.
ask any questions? or
Ben's like, oh.
Sorry.
The first question's for you.
What do I ask the first
Yeah,
question?
ask it to me. I'll answer.
So as working in, I'm just gonna kind of ask a really quick question about dance, because there's a lot of dance folks in here. And so I just think as somebody who works with dance companies specifically, what would you tell dance teachers? What was the biggest piece of advice that you would, or even music teachers, as far as collaboration goes and teaching students those kinds of skills?
Oh, I mean, I think that in terms of collaboration in general, the most important thing is that you're smiling and that you're open to do any crazy thing, and that you're not precious about, like, I am a romantic composer, you know, Chopin number 2 or something like that, and that you're totally happy to do the goofiest thing that, you know, the person wants. And I know that to me, that's the most important thing. And you just want to be someone that someone wants to spend like a bunch of time with, because it's just about working really hard, and you know, it takes a lot of time and a lot of refinement, and you have to be totally happy to just throw out that thing that you spent 12 hours working on, and you know, just like not a problem at all. And you're happy to have spent that time, and then you're happy to just totally ditch it and, you know, flip it backwards and keep that like 1 second or whatever it might be. And I think in terms of collaboration, that is by far the most important thing. And so that's a great thing to teach.
questions from the audience? You first, and then I'm going to be second.
So, this is a question because everybody keeps asking about surf music. Did you listen to Dick Dale at all? And are you familiar with, you know, like, I think I was reading that, like, you know, his English about like church music and the oud and the repetitive, you know, the kind of 16th rhythms that they have in the oud. Yeah.
Kind of like that.
Yeah, exactly.
For
Dick Dale, no.
a minute or two. No, I was really into vocals. I mean, the more vocals, the
Got it,
better.
the doo-wop.
So, yeah, starting with doo-wop.
Of course.
And a perfect medium for us because, you know, I wanted to sing the falsetto parts and Jaimie would sing the bass parts, and we got a bunch of other vocalists to sing the rest of this stuff in between. Always looking for a lead singer. And Brian Wilson was the same way. It was in Four Freshmen and all those Italian groups that were singing all those love songs and all the intricate harmony parts. So, and Dick Dale was, you know, it was kind of interesting, but it really, what bothered me about that in terms of surf music is that all right, I'm gonna play an instrumental and then let's get a surf title and just throw a title.
Right,
So
right,
to me, it really wasn't connected particularly, except that it maybe was.
Right.
I liked it, but only liked it for a minute or two and moved on to something else. So didn't listen to instrumentals that much. Much more interesting when all the vocal parts started.
Next, question.
Well, actually, it was a question and a comment, listening as everyone was speaking, talking about this collaboration that you had even with other art forms, either, you know, currently or in your profession. And being a single subject performer, I think that is, how do you get that message out to other musicians, dancers, artists, you know, that this is important. It's not just about your own art form. I mean, so you've had experience within the workplace, but what about educationally? You know, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, outside of just, I mean, I know we've got media arts here, but you all come from like a single subject art form.
Okay, I'll answer real quick. I just think like what Allison is doing at her school, which is putting on a multidisciplinary thing where there are marketing people working on a project with musicians, with construction people, with actors and all that stuff. You know, you just mixing up with everyone, and so that's a perfect way to do it.
You know, we did a collaborative, were you at the Art School Network in, I think it was Denver, and OSHA did a thing with us. They combined, and they used your music as well as some other for the dance, and they did a whole surf medley with some Dick Dale mixed in with, you know, Dean Torrance and Jan and Dean and all of that, and it was fabulous. Everyone loved it. You know, so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there is anything such as an isolated single subject anymore in industry. They all work together,
Yeah,
right?
but I'm just thinking about, like, if you're at a traditional high school, I mean, you've got a music program, you've got a theater
Yeah.
program, you've got an arts program, et cetera. You know, how are you gonna start getting even that message out that there is an integration, even if they do not have a technology aspect to
Well,
it? Because I see that as it's gotta be a progression.
I saw this in Nueva, and that's what it inspired me, is when they would put on a whole production, that there's there's people learning how to do the lights, there's people designing the flyers, some people are getting the sponsors, so there's people that are just seating people, there's people that are, you know, they're selling cookies out front, there's people that are designing the clothes, there's people that are doing the makeup, there's people that are writing and editing the sets, people doing the music. I think like all the collaboration, and not just in students, I want to reiterate that as I look at youth, I realize, and as we can see in the world today, that youth are not the only ones that need to learn how to collaborate.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
No, I agree with that. That was it.
Yes,
it right
and
there.
the way that the school system is usually placed is kind of mathematically of like adding and going in a
Right, specific direction.
and it's not cyclical as a connected. For me, I learned that. I learned that, and remember we were watching Breaking the other day?
Oh, yeah.
It's like certain things I go back to, you know, like I learned from Beat Street, where there was one of the guys that was with the camera, and there was one that was the artist, and one was the rapper, and one was the DJ. And then when you have this with youth as well as with adults, and it starts in youth and as they grow up, then they learn that they're not in school to get their good grade and then go to their college and then go out and get their job, that they could start a business at that age. They could start a production company, they could open a theater, and it's probably going to do better for them than to go just as one, because more than two heads work better than one when people work together. And it's just not in the structure of how they, of how things are taught, I think. And I think that's starting to change now because...
That's the change.
Yeah.
You just have to find people and harass them until they want to work with you. I mean, that's what we do.
What subject do you teach?
And guys, at this point, we're past
We're done.
now the point, so I really want to thank, first of all, our panelists for taking the time. So give it up.
Thank you.